Hi there, I'm Nina Ellis.
And I'm Chris Welter.
And we are journalists at public radio station WYSO in Yellow Springs, Ohio. We're the producers of this podcast called The Ohio Country.
The Ohio Country is a podcast that's about the historic Ohio tribes that were removed from the Ohio River Valley and how they're reconnecting now with this region and telling history in a new way.
We're both from the Midwest. I'm from Indiana. Chris grew up in Ohio. But this history is a revelation to us. We didn't learn these stories in school.
No, I learned about the Trail of Tears, but I didn't learn about the removals that happened right here in the state of Ohio where I grew up and the long-standing effects of those removals on both Ohio and on the people who were removed.
So we're going to take a deep dive into this very, very complicated subject and hope that you are curious enough, as we were, to go with us. It's a story that affects everything about present-day Ohio. It explains a lot, and we think that, like us, you're going to be really surprised at what you learn.
So please listen to the podcast, and then when you're done, go to our website, wyso.org. We'll have a lot of digital resources there so you can learn even more and dig into maps and photos and historic documents that will help you really understand the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
The Ohio River is a mile wide at Cincinnati. The water's greenish-brown and murky. This place is an intersection where histories meet, and it's the starting point of our story. On the Kentucky side of the river, you can get on a triple-decker replica riverboat, perfect for what's called an historic sightseeing tour of the Queen City. There's a lot to see. The riverboat captain is the tour guide over the PA system.
Well, right off the bat, we get to see some commercial traffic.
Barges pass us going west, loaded with coal.
And they are pushing a full tow that is 15 barges. That's 5 long and 3 wide.
As we go under the famous Roebling Bridge. The view of Cincinnati is laid out in a wide panorama. Skyscrapers sparkle in the sunlight, and on the waterfront are 2 stadiums, one for the Bengals and one for the Reds.
The park area in the foreground is the Smale Riverfront Park. It extends from the Paycor Stadium up to the Great American Ballpark.
The Riverfront Park has walking and biking, trees and grass, but like the riverboat tour, which in 90 Minutes never mentions the native tribes, it's incomplete when it comes to explaining local history. There are statues here of the Roman statesman Cincinnatus and a flying pig that commemorates the city's pork processing days. There are lots of historic markers, too, about the African Americans who crossed the river to freedom, Irish and German immigrants, and colonists who'd fought in the Revolution and were looking to start over in the West.
In the mindset of a white settler coming to this region in the late 1700s, early 1800s, they're a byproduct of their cultural time. They do genuinely see this as a vacancy, which is wrong. They were wrong. But they genuinely see this as a vacancy and a place where they can carve out lives for themselves.
Rebecca Wingo is a history professor at the University of Cincinnati.
So when I think about people settling here, I think about the excitement they must feel with going to these newly claimed American territories, which were illegally claimed, but newly claimed American territories, and thinking about themselves as actors in creating our country and in spreading the very newly formed democratic ideals that came out of the American Revolution. That's palpable. Mm-hmm. It's also destructive because it intentionally replaced everything else that was here and everyone else that were here.
This was a rich and fertile land, full of wildlife and edible plants, and it was carefully stewarded by the indigenous tribes who lived here. They often used fire to keep the land productive, and they created a rich mosaic of diverse landscapes. When Ohio became a state, among the tribes at home here were the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandot, Ottawa, Seneca-Cayuga, and Lenape, also known as the Delaware. This place, today called Cincinnati, has always been a crossroads of human cultures.
This was all very used space by all the tribes. The mound builders in this region go back thousands upon thousands of years. And so there were mounds here, there were earthworks here. If you go up into the center of Cincinnati, you can still find Mound Street. And it's because they excavated it and leveled it, and they flattened this whole area so they could build this city. So this would have looked like rolling hills, but very carefully cultivated rolling hills, because those are mounds. And they were all the way down this shoreline.
Once the new settlers came in the 1700s, the city rose quickly on the banks. But prosperity and opportunity for the new arrivals had a cost. Just 50 years after the city was founded and Ohio became a state, the tribes were gone, systematically removed. It's a long, complicated story and not always taught in schools, but in her role as head of public history at the University of Cincinnati, Rebecca Wingo wants the historical markers here on the waterfront to tell a more complete story and to add markers that tell about the removals, because they played out right here on this riverbank.
My hope is that we can better understand our place by telling a fuller history. So if you asked anybody in Cincinnati, did you know that the Wyandot Nation and Miami Nation, that they came here, boarded steamboats, and the last time they ever spent an evening in Ohio, in their home territory, was here in Cincinnati? Nobody would know. Nobody knows. But Cincinnatians at the time knew. And so when the Wyandot, for example, walked, they had horses and cattle and their wagons and everything they could possibly carry loaded onto those wagons and onto their horses. And they walked 150 miles from Upper Sandusky here to Cincinnati. Throngs of people lined the street to watch the last tribe leave. And so people are flooding the streets to see the last Indians in Ohio. That's what they call it. All of these newspaper articles are called the last Indians. And in throngs, so many people were lining the streets that the Wyandot couldn't even get through to the steamboats. They had to put police and guards on the riverbanks to keep people from walking onto the boat to see them leave, to just see, to touch, to understand, and to lament. And they were really of these two minds. They were like, this is very sad. This is the end of the race. But there was nothing to be done about it.
Yeah.
This is manifest destiny. It's literally people believing that they have a right to be here and others do not. What that would have looked like to the Wyandot folks who were leaving their homelands and headed to the unknown.
You're listening to The Ohio Country from public radio station WYSO and the Eichelberger Center for Community Voices in Yellow Springs, Ohio. In 1787, a document called the Northwest Ordinance was written by delegates to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. When the British were defeated, America won a huge tract of land west of the Allegheny Mountains called the Northwest Territories, and the Northwest Ordinance laid out rules for how it would be settled and governed. It said there would be no slavery. It said that the utmost good faith shall be observed toward the Indians. But within 50 years, all the tribes were removed. In our podcast, we'll look at how that happened. The story has been nearly erased from public view, but if you look around and listen closely, you can notice a new chapter being written. And so we begin in present-day Oklahoma. Here's my colleague, Chris Welter.
This is Ottawa County, and there's 9 federally recognized tribes here. 7 of them are historic Ohio tribes, and then the 2 other ones are the Quapaw, which come from the southeast, and the Modocs, which come from the Oregon, California area. I put hundreds of miles on my car during my 10 days visiting the area around Ottawa County. Compared to Ohio, it looks a lot different. The woods aren't as lush, the soil's more dry, it's really hot and humid. Lots of the roadkill are armadillos. The tribes in Ottawa County don't have expansive reservations like the Navajo and Lakota have in other parts of the United States. That's because of something called allotment, a federal policy around the turn of the 20th century that divided communally held Indian tribal lands or reservations into individually owned private property. Allotment has created a patchwork quality to the tribal land holdings down here. It's been a barrier to economic development and community. The places I visited sprawled across many miles. Cell phone service can be spotty in Ottawa County, so when I wasn't talking to myself on my drives, I listened to the radio. One station I could always pick up was KNEO. It played hours of evangelical sermons every day.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Person in the balcony, do you have the ability to hear what the Spirit is saying?
KNEO is based in Neosho, Missouri, a town that's just about 10 minutes east of Ottawa County across the Oklahoma border. I went there to see the grand opening of the newest location of the People's Bank of Seneca.
Cheers! 1, 2, 3. You know what? Okay, yep. Go ahead and cut when you're ready.
The chief of the Eastern Shawnee tribe of Oklahoma, Glenna Wallace, invited me there. The People's Bank of Seneca is majority owned by Wallace's tribe. It's become one of the Eastern Shawnee's most successful business ventures, outside of gaming. Chief Wallace is a retired English professor. A number of her students work for the Bank of Seneca now.
They are outstanding about getting involved in the entire community. They will be supporters of the school. They will be present. They will be supporters of the town. They will be supporters of the chamber. And they don't have to be asked. They volunteer and suggest ways that they can become involved. And so it's extremely important.
Darren Burr, the president and CEO of the People's Bank of Seneca, was smiling ear to ear at the ribbon cutting. He still remembers how he first got involved with the bank.
I was probably 33, 34 at the time and was a commercial lender for a competing bank in another community. Chief Glenna came into my office one day. The Eastern Shawnee tribe had purchased the controlling interest of People's Bank of Seneca. And she came to see me and she said, listen, we need someone with local community ties that's passionate about our town, that's passionate about the kids and our community. And I said, I'm not the person. I'm really not. I'm not qualified for this and I'm not ready. And Chief said, well, I'm not leaving. And she had closed my door in the office. I was actually at my other job. And I said, you know what, Chief, honestly, I need to go home and I need to pray about this and I want to talk to my wife. And she said, I've already prayed for both of us and that's what led me here. And she said, so that you can check that off the list. And that's the thing that I really appreciated about the tribe that I guess I didn't understand at first was they have a perpetual look at things because the tribe's going to continue forever. And they're looking at not just investments that are going to pay out for the next 3 or 4 years. They're looking for what are investments that are going to pay out for the next 40, 50, and 60 years for the next generation of tribal members.
Burr has seen the Eastern Shawnee tribe grow along with his bank. He says they've made smart investments in the local community, and as a commercial lender, he appreciates that. One of the reasons Burr has so much confidence in the tribe is because of the leadership of Chief Wallace. She's 85 years old. When she was born, the tribe had nearly disappeared.
I received my Native American heritage on my grandmother's side, but my grandmother died when she was only 29 years of age, and my mother was only 7 years old. So I certainly had no influence from my grandmother, nor was I taught anything by my grandmother, nor was my mother because of being so young. Eastern Shawnee was just something that my elders did. So my great-grandparents, my Uncle Thomas, who was chief of this tribe for 25 years, they all firmly believed that the only way we could survive and have a good life was to be assimilated. So it was a deliberate intention, it was a deliberate move not to teach the language. And we didn't have any money. We were poor financially. I was rich in family love, and that's the more important of the two. So what I am doing today and the role that I am playing is certainly nothing I prepared for, certainly nothing I ever expected, and is still a surprise to me.
Chief Glenna's office is full of pictures of her family: brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Nowadays, lots of them live in the area and work for the tribe and its businesses, she tells me. But it wasn't always that way. Glenna and her family were forced to move out of Oklahoma and away from the tribe in the 1940s, after the local economy had been devastated by the Dust Bowl and Great Depression. She was just 9 years old.
It was the 5 of us children, my mom and dad, and then my mother's brother and his wife and 2 children went, so 11 of us in this truck, and we took off for Oregon, California, and Washington, so the West Coast, and we were migrant workers for 3 years. Those 3 years are what impacted me and what influenced me. We lived in the back of that old truck, or we drove it into an abandoned barn, or many of those places had little huts or shanties that their migrant people lived in. I can remember in Oregon picking green beans, and they happened to actually be hog farmers, and they had a hog farm. And so they had all these pigsties out there. I had my own pigsty that I could sleep in every single night, and I can remember picking up a broom and sweeping that dirt until it was so caked and would just shine that I wanted my pigsty to be the best-looking pigsty of anyone's. And that was not a sacrifice. I was a female Huckleberry Finn, a female Tom Sawyer. I didn't need 5 pairs of shoes. I had bare feet that took me wherever I needed to go and accomplish whatever I needed to do. I wasn't sacrificing anything. It was a tremendous experience and a wonderful life, those 3 years that I lived out there.
Glenna's father ended up getting sick and couldn't work in the fields, so her family decided to move back to Oklahoma to live on her grandmother's allotment. But a lot of other Eastern Shawnee and people from the other Shawnee tribes stayed on the West Coast and built lives there. There are 3 Shawnee tribes: the Eastern Shawnee, the Absentee Shawnee, and the Shawnee. Today, those tribes have close to 15,000 citizens in total, and they all have roots in the Ohio River Valley. But now in 2023, the Shawnee live in diaspora across the United States and the world, and that's a challenge. It's created a scenario where people like Glenna, who have spent most of their lives in Oklahoma, say that Ohio is the Eastern Shawnee ancestral homelands. But for a lot of other tribal citizens who grew up elsewhere, like on the West Coast, Oklahoma is where they long to return. And for a long time, Chief Glenna says they didn't have much to attract people back.
Beat the July heat at Indigo Sky Casino. On Friday, 6 to 10 p.m., play for your chance to win $12,000 in cash. Indigo Sky Casino.
Gaming has transformed the Eastern Shawnee and other tribes in Oklahoma. Successful bingo halls and raffles in the 80s have gradually turned into massive casino operations with slots and card games, and huge hotels with beautiful swimming pools. Indigo Sky Casino and Resort is the Eastern Shawnee crown jewel. Indigo Sky was constructed in 2012, and it sits on a hill overlooking a highway. The tribe's seal is all over the building. It's on the side of the hotel towers, at the bottom of the pool, and on the name tags of employees. The inside of the casino is full of artwork that shows 18th century Shawnee people. One painting above the elevator shows the famous white settler and speculator Simon Kenton running the gauntlet at the Shawnee village of Old Town.
Above the elevator is a picture of a Shawnee warrior with a war club. And on the left-hand side is a picture, a painting of the gauntlet. I selected both of those for a reason and placed them there for a reason. And I joke about it, but when I give tours of that building, I tell this every time. I say, we were so poor and we've had to struggle and fight and manage our money and do without in order to have this. And I said, here we have built this nice place. And if we have people that go up into our rooms and destroy our rooms, you see that war club up there? Or you see that gauntlet? I'm going to beat the hell out of them, you know. So they are there to tell a message, you know. Don't destroy what we have had to work so hard to build.
Before the tribe got into gaming, Glenna says they had very little money. They received measly annual grants from the U.S. government that barely covered the cost of office supplies for their meetings. Also, from the time the Eastern Shawnee were removed from Ohio in 1832, all the way until 1977, the tribe didn't own a building where they could meet or conduct business. Instead, they met in church basements or at people's houses. The language and culture was virtually lost, outside of a few traditional families. Some Shawnee people were forced to sell off family heirlooms to collectors to get by. But when you visit Oklahoma in 2023, it's clear that the Eastern Shawnee are doing much better because they have more financial independence and tribal sovereignty. With Indigo Sky and their other businesses like the banks, they have millions, employ hundreds of local residents, and offer a variety of services to tribal citizens. Now, when a tribal citizen comes back to visit the Eastern Shawnee headquarters for powwows or family reunions, they have a place to stay at Indigo Sky. The Eastern Shawnee have chosen to put a significant amount of money toward cultural revitalization as well. That's the sound of flint napping and horn spoons being filed down at the Eastern Shawnee tribe's cultural annex during a Sunday workshop. Close to 50 people were there to learn traditional practices. The annex where the workshop was held represents the tribe's growth. People reminisce there about how it used to be the tribe's original bingo hall in the 80s before they outgrew it. Clint Cassee is a citizen of the Eastern Shawnee tribe and is an expert flint napper. He learned the technique from elders in the tribe. He sat in a circle with a dozen or so students, demonstrating how to nap from a rough flint rock all the way down to a thin blade. He says the process can take up to 10 hours to complete.
Flint napping was almost a lost art. There were very few people, 20, 25 years ago, there were maybe 20 or 30 people in the United States that were master flint nappers, and now there's probably 20 or 30 in the 4-state area just in these 4 or 5 counties. So it's important to keep the cultures alive so we don't lose them, bow building and basket weaving, all of those.
One of Cassee's students is Leland McIntosh. He's 15 and a citizen of the absentee Shawnee tribe. He drove 3 hours with his family to attend the workshop. He was one of just a few teenagers there.
There's some people that are out there just doing high school things or whatever, and then you got people like me coming in here and doing cultural things, being with my family and everything. And it's important to me because some cultures are dying, and they need people to bring them back up again for the future.
Chief Glenna was at the workshop. She chose to make a horn spoon, something she'd never done before. She had to carve down and thin out a bison horn. The horn spoon she was making is based on the design of those used by Shawnee people in the 17th and 18th centuries. In those days, it wouldn't have been difficult to find bison in Ohio. Their horns are extremely durable and are made of a waterproof material. The workshop's an all-day event that starts at 7 or 8 in the morning and goes until around midnight. Everyone is fed 3 meals. It takes that long to start to learn the kind of practices being taught there. The idea is that after you attend, you know enough to do whatever you learned again on your own. It's also a rare opportunity for the Shawnee from all 3 tribes to be together in fellowship. Lots of the older people here either went to government-run boarding schools or their parents did, including one that's just down the road in Wyandot, Oklahoma. At those schools, cultural practices like the ones being taught here were actively repressed. That's part of the reason days like these are so important to Chief Glenna.
The more you know about your culture, the more you want to learn. There is something addictive about it. There is something that is fulfilling about it. There is something that makes you realize that there's something special about your tribe. There's something special about your history. There's something special about identifying with people from your culture and trying to preserve it and pass on that special. You'll notice that there aren't many children here at all today. These are adults and elders. We need to learn these things so that we can then pass it on to our children and keep our heritage alive. And that's important to us.
Despite all the economic and cultural growth the tribe has experienced, Chief Glenna says there are still real challenges in her community. Lots of people in Ottawa County used to work in the lead and zinc mining industries before it collapsed and left a trail of ghost towns and environmental hazards.
You will learn if you are here in Ottawa County very long that Ottawa County is a very poor county. The statistics indicate that in Ottawa County, which has only a population of just a little over 30,000, we have 522 Eastern Shawnee tribal citizens living in Ottawa County. Of those 522, 400 of them fall below the poverty line. So Indigo Sky is certainly a success story for us. But statistics are quite readily available for natives in the United States. We have the highest suicide rate. We have the highest dropout rate from high school. We have the highest dropout rate from college. We have the lowest entry into college. We have negative statistics that define us and that we just simply must work upon.
But Chief Glenna is working to address those negative statistics using her tribe's resources. 6 years ago, the Eastern Shawnee opened an early childhood learning center. It's available to parents every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Stacy Fries has run the Childhood Learning Center since it opened. Though not a tribal citizen herself, she sees how the Eastern Shawnee provides services that benefit everyone in her community. And as a longtime employee, she understands why the tribe is so keen on teaching its language.
As a mom of 2 kids, my son has gone here since we opened, and my daughter now attends. It's definitely the most affordable in the area. So each age group has a animal clan name. We also have the Shawnee names that go with that, especially the older kids. We try really hard to incorporate that into our daily lessons. Little kids, the little ones, not so much because they're not talking yet, but we try to incorporate those just little things into our daily routine that become just normal.
Next door to the Childhood Center, the tribe built a wellness center complex with batting cages, a gym with a basketball shooting machine, an indoor walking path, and a pool with an underwater treadmill. And just like at the Early Childhood Center, there's an effort at the Wellness Center to reinforce the tribe's language and culture. As you walk along the indoor path, there are signs on the wall with translation and pronunciations of common English words into the Shawnee language. There's also a senior center where they offer free meals to their citizens. They've constructed affordable housing, offer reimbursement for school supplies, and have free health clinics. The tribe also just opened an Ohio River Valley splash pad behind the preschool. They spent around $3 million to construct it. Chief Glenna says the splash pad is a place for people from the community to cool off during the sweltering Oklahoma summer. But there's also more to it for tribal citizens. The water that shoots up into the air from the splash pad follows the outline of the Ohio River, a reminder of the Shawnee homeland. A large panther and a swan with water shooting out of its mouth decorate the pad. Both of those animals are on the tribe's seal. There are also references at the water park to the number of steps, miles, and days the Eastern Shawnee traveled west out of Ohio in 1832.
Interestingly enough, we've done it on a historical theme. So we've done it on a water theme, a river theme, and so that's the Ohio River. And we have indicated on it where, at what point we left Ohio and went to Indiana, how many days, how many miles, how many steps it took to get through Indiana to the next state, Illinois, and then leaving Illinois, coming to Missouri, then on to Oklahoma.
Glenna wants her youngest citizens to celebrate their tribe's resilience and revival. And now Glenna has a desire to use her tribe's resources to help her citizens reconnect more intimately with their ancestral homelands in Ohio. At the end of our time together, Chief Glenna took me to a Thai restaurant in Neosho, near the tribe's newest bank, for dinner. She talked about cultural bus tours to Ohio that she has been organizing for Eastern Shawnee citizens. She said they've been emotional at times, but also inspiring.
Once your people have lived in a land and they're no longer there, that doesn't mean your heart has left that land. Your feet might have, but that doesn't mean your heart has. And that kind of describes what I will always have a place in my heart for Ohio. And our first trip back, it seemed like every place we went, it rained. And it rained, but it wasn't a harsh rain. And somebody asked me how I felt about it, and I said, I think it's a gentle rain because we've had so much resentment and we've had so much pain that's been caused to us by Ohio that it has to be gentle to begin to remove some of that bitterness and remove that resentment and be able to be friendly with people and talk about the situation there. And another lady then, she looked at me and she said, that's a beautiful thought, but she said, I think when it starts raining on us, she said, I think that's our people in heaven who are so happy seeing us to have returned. That's their tears of happiness coming down. Those thoughts have always stayed with me, and I feel that way.
In the next episode, we go to Greene County, Ohio. For generations, county history has been told mostly from a white perspective, but that's changing. We'll meet people like Greene County historian Catherine Wilson, who are collaborating with historic Ohio tribes to create a new narrative.
Finally, we're going to be able to tell and have the Shawnee help tell their own story rather than interpretations after a long time, and bring their vibrant culture here. So it wasn't just about white people taking Indian land. We deprived ourselves of their experiences and their culture, so we're lacking too. And that's going to be such a tremendous opportunity to have them back.
You just heard episode 1 of the Ohio Country called Still Here, written by Nina Ellis and Chris Welter. The series editor of the Ohio Country is Samantha Summer. The cultural advisor is Dr. John Bickers, assistant professor at Case Western University in Cleveland, and a citizen of the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma. Flawn Williams is the audio mixer, and the music was composed by Evan Miller. Our logo was designed by Layla Troyer, a citizen of the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma. And I'm the digital producer, Mary Evans. To find photographs, maps, and links, go to wyiso.org/podcast. This program is made possible through a partnership with Ohio Humanities, a nonprofit that shares stories to spark conversations and inspire ideas. And by the National Endowment for the Humanities, A More Perfect Union initiative. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the Ohio Humanities or the National Endowment for the Humanities.